All right. Welcome, everyone. Can you all see the screen? Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for coming to Management Decision in Motion webinar. So my name is Wendy Chen. I'm a senior associate editor and then managing the emotion section, which is our new initiative. So I'm from Texas Tech University. So just a little bit background, why emotion was born. So oftentimes we heard management researchers, they have solutions to some problems, but our practitioner managers don't even know about it. So how many times if you read magazines or newspapers like Forbes, and then you will hear, oh, practitioner managers always have some issues, so they want to address. So for example, currently the big topic will be if you want to work from home or if you are supposed to just continue the remote work style. So these are the things that concerns our practitioner managers. But in reality, our researchers probably have already researched that topic. So they actually have knowledge and the solutions to the problem, but the practitioner managers are not aware of it. And also, a lot of times, managers, they are facing challenges, but management researchers are not aware of them. So whenever we need to look at the current literature, and then we always learn how to contribute to literature a lot of times theoretically and empirically. But in terms of topic, so our managers, the topics that they care about, they feel challenging about, and then those are the topics our manager researchers are not aware of them. So as we mentioned earlier, Management Decision is a leading scholarly publication on management, and it is the oldest management journal. So we are trying to have this emotion section to basically build a Brooklyn Bridge between management academics and the practitioners, so that everybody's work is not wasted. And the purpose of emotion is, as I mentioned, we're trying to create a new channel where management scholars and the practitioners can have a dialogue. And everywhere now in academic and in practitioner world, we always learned our work is supposed to create real world impact. So we believe that our authors' papers, their impact score not supposed to just be measured by the number of citations, but also measured by how much impact they can create for practitioner managers and the real world impact. And so this way, we believe will also benefit our authors so that their papers can be more influential. So not only limited in the academic world, but also in the real life world too. And so we want to create emotion to provide cutting edge viewpoints against conventional wisdom. So for example, conventional wisdom will say, of course, whenever you are at work, you're supposed to go in. You're supposed to meet your colleagues in person. So even today, one news article was talking about one employee feel very puzzled because over the pandemic, they're already used to really using Zoom, using other technology to communicate with their colleagues, with their bosses. But now as things become more open, so the boss want everybody to go in. And then that employee found all of her teammates now have joined, listened to the command basically, and then started to go into the companies. So these are the people, they feel left out. So they want to ask questions. And the newspaper was trying to say, oh, this is a real puzzle. We don't know what to do. And is it possible, maybe the better idea is talk to your boss but the employee didn't feel comfortable with it. And then the boss also feel they don't know how to manage the employees who work remotely. So if something we get from the research perspective that we can address, thinking about any viewpoint, you can against the conventional wisdom such as you have to be in person to work together. And what's unique about emotion is both researchers and the practitioners are welcome. And now we have both academic and the practitioner reviewers. Also, another important thing is whenever we talk about management, a lot of times management seem to take place only in business schools. And we assume management is for profits, but there are other types of organizations. So emotion is not limited to for profits only. So next, I want to walk you through what emotion papers are and what emotion papers are not. So emotion papers, they use real life examples to present a view. So not necessarily we have to use the existing theory, but use real life examples to present a view. Then next, as I mentioned earlier, emotion papers, we prefer that they go against conventional wisdom and use examples to impact academic management theory. In the meantime, in the emotion papers, you're supposed to provide solutions to real-world problems experienced by managers. So such as communication, cooperation, implementations of new technology, and other practically focused challenges. So we have an audience here who are from supply chain management, information management. So all the different types of management will welcome your submissions. And very importantly, we want the emotion papers to have actionable instruction to help practitioners get started. So whenever practitioner managers or any small business founders, they are stuck by any challenges, and you are writing about a topic that you believe that you can help them out. So we want you to provide some actionable instructions, how they can do that. And while you are doing this paper, not only just thinking about from the leadership perspective. So we all know stakeholder theory. So we want to know if your assessment is complete. So therefore, we want to know that you have actually talked or studied from different perspectives from different stakeholders. So instead of only talking to CEO or writing about what CEO should do, you can also think about middle management or even speak with low-level employees. And think about if they also feel this is a problem, this issue worth addressing. And we also wanted this paper to be applicable to organizations in other domains and countries, since we know management decision, we're an international journal. So we receive lots of submissions from people all over the world. And a lot of times we receive articles, they study one village, but that village might not be applicable to all other places around the world. So what emotion papers are not? So emotion papers are not research papers. So not like 8,000 words or 10,000 word research papers. We have received lots of submissions recently, and some people submitted a whole paper, a research paper to us. And some other people submitted abbreviated research papers. So they try to make the research paper a little bit shorter and send to us. Also, in-motion papers are not pure academic theory papers. So you can use the paper to develop a theory, but more importantly, you need to make the connection between theory and real practice. Also, in-motion papers are not political advocacy papers. So we received some papers are actually policy papers. So thinking about what policymakers are supposed to be doing. But again, this is a management journal. Also, we have people submitting complaints. So complaining about an organization. So complaining about their practice. So again, this is research-based or theory-based and the real practice-based templates for people to make connection between research and practice. Also, it is not a kind of, some people like trying to use the emotion section to really exaggerate that their paper is really important. How do they exaggerate? Instead of talking about, oh, in what's a field specifically they can make contributions to, so they will say, basically, the world is ending. So something like this, if we don't consider this research. Most times, papers fail because they don't have potential actions. So they are not talking about, from their research findings, how can that be applicable to managers? And poorly written or specific to a particular region, so which is fine. You can use a case study in a specific region, but you need to tell us why this is applicable to other places. So now I want to walk you through how to write a successful in-motion paper. So as I mentioned earlier, in-motion papers can be written by both researchers and the practitioners. So I want to start to talk about how, if you are a researcher, how to write a successful in-motion paper. So first, if you want to talk about a topic, say it can be organizations an HR problem, or it can be what's their supply chain management problem. So a lot of times people use terminologies and then they don't tell us what they mean. So you unpack a concept proposed by you in this paper and trying to explain to us what you mean, what it covers. And then you specify why your study is different from other research in the same area. Remember, this emotion section, we welcome cutting edge viewpoint. So you tell us why your study is different. And if your study focuses on one country or one industry, just spell out how can that be generalizable for managers in other domains and in other countries. So if you are a researcher submitting a paper to InMotion, we mainly evaluate your paper on if you are clearly lay out what practitioners can implement from your research. So why is it related to practitioners' daily management? And how can they do it if they have the challenge that you bring up in your paper? And while you are proposing a new idea or a new solution to an issue, then don't just think it is perfect. Consider if there is any downsides to implementing a strategy that you propose. So tell us under what circumstances your idea might be helpful, and under what circumstances managers can take the approach of what you had proposed. Also, explain the value that this new strategy or new idea or new methods that you're going to bring to businesses. So in other words, the InMotion articles, you are going to consider how you make the connection or how you bridge the gap between conventional academic research and real life practice. And in the meantime, you also need to consider any limitations or under what circumstances that they can use your approach. In addition, trying to tell the story from the perspective of multiple stakeholders. So they, as I mentioned earlier, they don't necessarily, you have to be CEOs. And have clear the interest in writing. So we recently received some submissions and they start the article with a historical story and start the article with some recent news and the magazine papers, where they really talk about any kind of timely issues. So think about emotion papers if you just if we try to use one word to talk, one sentence to talk about how to make emotion papers interesting. So you think about if you're writing a magazine article, but from an academic perspective, if you are a researcher writing for emotion. So the language is for a broader audience of practitioners. And also follow the requirement that our requirement is about 2,000 to 3,000 words. So sometimes if you are a little bit over, it is fine. And since it is your first round submission, but basically don't submit to us a whole research paper. We received a submission that is 9,000 words. So which is obviously a research paper that probably, I don't know if they submitted to the wrong place or if they even meant to submit to emotion. Next, if you are a practitioner, how to write a successful emotion paper. So first, you provide a clear background of the organizations that you base your observations on. We don't know which industry your business really fall into, so we want to know about the organization and the industry that you are talking about, and describe the management issue that you identify in the organization. Also, try to tell the story from different perspectives. So for example, if you were an employee or if you were a middle manager in an organization, you identified a problem. For example, organizational communication. And then you tell us, is this the problem that only you feel it's a problem? Or actually your colleagues from different levels also feel it is a problem. Ideally, if you know this problem is also needed to be addressed from other organizations too, so they also have the same issue. And identify the gap between academic research and a managerial practice with a focus on this issue. So say you're going to talk about inter-organizational communication or intercommunication. So you can look online, see if there is any academic papers already talk about this issue and what did they say? So what's new from your perspective? So tell us why this management issue is important and how your paper contributes to management research. So if you are a practitioner writing for emotion, you're going to think about how you can bridge the gap between practice and management research. So after you identify an issue and you believe it is important, so you provide a solution to the issue. Is it you require additional technology, or what from the leadership perspective, what they are supposed to be doing? So you provide a solution. And again, consider any drawbacks of what you propose and explain the value that the new strategy or methods will bring to businesses. So you also need to make sure your writing is clear, interesting, and easy to follow. So we have all the senior and associate editors in this webinar. So I also want to walk you through how to review for emotion. So every time whenever we send emotion papers to our reviewers, I will receive questions like how to review for this. So they never reviewed another paper that are not research papers. So this is the rubric. And then whenever we send our review request out to our reviewers, we always include this whole rubric in the request. So first, we examine and evaluate the originality of this paper. How innovative is this idea? So everybody, like we received lots of submissions talking about ESG. So if you are also talking about ESG, so what's new here? How innovative is your idea? And the methodology, is the methodology sound? For example, one paper we received for emotion, and that author only talked to, I think it's his colleague. So they feel, okay, so a colleague in a different country and for a very niche industry. So this is the methodology that they used. And then we, from the researcher's perspective, we want to make sure that our papers still methodologically sound. This emotion, the management decision is a leading management journal. So it's a scholarly journal. So regardless if you are a researcher or if you are a practitioner, we want to make sure that you can bridge the gap between management research and the practice and create bigger real world impact. But in the meantime, doesn't mean we will lower standard. It doesn't mean you can just sending some basic dialogue with your colleague to us. So we evaluate by their significance of academic contribution. So what is the overall value of this work to the field of management research? And what is the impact on practice? How useful are the findings of this work for practitioner managers? So many times whenever management researchers are working on a paper, we already need to write practical implications at the end. So management decision in motion, we just need to making sure that you can unpack the practical implications a little bit more. So we need you to tell us how can they start to implement it, under what circumstances they can do it, and what are the things that they need to be aware of it whenever they implement it. So just tell us a little bit more about how your research can have an impact on practice. We also ask our reviewers to rate the ease of implementation. So how difficult would it be for managers to implement the suggestions from this work? So if you try to contribute and then to a managerial practice by giving them super grand idea, so they don't know how to really start. Although you give them a big idea, you think it will work. So we want authors to make sure these ideas are more specific. We need to know that, just imagine if you are a manager. So this type of manager is what your research try to target. You are trying to help these managers. So how can they implement it directly from what they have learned from your papers? And how generalizable are the findings from the work to be used for practitioner managers from different domains and the geographies? So say you are a human resource manager and in a different country. So, and then you want to tell us if this idea that you try to talk about, is it possible it can also be implemented in other countries and in other domains? We also evaluate their papers on how timely and the cutting edge is this work. So if you're talking about a conventional management issue, it is fine, but we need you to spell out why this old issue that you try to talk about is actually relatively we can still apply in today's world. So the quality of writing, we want to make sure the paper is well written, which means you don't have too many bad grammars, and then you have the paper has been proofread. So you want to make sure that your writing has good quality. So thank you so much, and thank you so much again for your time and for your support. So now any questions?
Are we looking to receive more practitioner-oriented articles or a combination of two? And if that is the case, are we looking more theoretical pieces or qualitative pieces versus quantitative pieces for this section?
Okay, great question. So as I mentioned, the uniqueness of emotion is we welcome both researchers and the practitioners. And the research methods can be either way. It can be qualitative and it can be quantitative. So whenever you, from a researcher's perspective, your research methods can be exactly the same how you usually do for a research paper. But the difference is you need to spell out more about how can that help practitioners. And if you are a practitioner submitting a paper, you need to tell us how can that your paper contribute to academic management research. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sure. And the length here is also important to, I guess, emphasize. 2,000 to 3,000 words means like the academicians cannot get into too much theoretical front end, and so that's also important to know. I think it's a great move for the journal. I really like it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, as I said, we really appreciate your support. Without your efforts, this will not happen. And so in terms of theory, so for this paper, we don't try to be a theoretical paper solely. So we need to have methods. So either way, qualitative or quantitative. So but the thing is, you don't need to unpack theory too much. So you don't need to do a lengthy lit review, basically. So the lit review part in a conventional research paper, you can downplay that. You summarize the lit review, the main idea of the lit review. So you don't need to write 2 pages of literature review.
And let me just say one thing too. As Wendy was saying, we're really trying. Example you could think about in your brain is more like a Harvard Business Review paper where.
Yes.
They're not focusing on jargon and all that. They're trying to make it understandable to a more general audience. That's what we're looking for.
Exactly.
But something important to mention, Brandon, is a typical Harvard Business Review article, great contribution in so many ways, very elite. But since it is not the traditional peer review type of a journal process, ours would be different in this case, because ours will be going through a typical journal peer review process, unlike the Harvard Business Review journal article. So that actually gives us an edge there.
It does, yeah. Yeah, we're not the same as that for sure. That's a good point. Yeah.
So this is why we have this webinar to really be making sure our review board, our editorial board is on the same page, so we understand how to review for this new section papers. Because you're absolutely right, we want to make sure our papers in the journal, regardless which section, is still robust, is still rigorous. So therefore, we have both researchers and the practitioners to review the submissions. I want to make sure I understand, I can pronounce your name correctly. Rosita?
I'm traveling and I'm at a cafe and it's a little bit noisy. But as I've said before, I think it's a great initiative. And this is a question that I have both as an author and as a reviewer, given the length of the papers. Sometimes it's really difficult to get deep into methodology, and both actually qualitative and quantitative, depending on how sophisticated the quantitative methodology is. But especially for qualitative, usually qualitative methodology to describe it's much lengthier. And if I may have a suggestion here as a reviewer, if we can kind of initiate this type of process, if a reviewer thinks that they need more material in order to judge the soundness of the methodology, rather than rejecting the paper, if we can kind of, through the system, ask the authors, or basically indicate to the area editor or whatever the procedure is, that the authors need to provide an appendix or something more explanation about the methodology, because the length constraint is really tight and it's difficult to both convey the ideas, the impact, and the methodology to prove that it's a sound methodology.
Yeah, that's something we for sure can do. A lot of journals are doing more of that these days, especially with concerns about, false data and things like that. So we do have the ability in Scholar One to have them submit multiple documents that can be available to the reviewers, but not necessarily be actually published in the paper. Yeah.
Oh, great.
I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for the question. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
hi. It's absolutely interesting because we always talk about the impact on practitioners of our research. So to have tools like that in the researcher perspective and probably also in the practitioner perspective. What do you think about, we have examples of article of something like sample articles that can be circulated, because to stimulate probably production of these, if we have some sample also as a format. I was thinking this could be good both for authors and for reviewers, because you review, when you act as a reviewer, you think you have to understand better probably what is the aim of the publication and which is this approach, and we need really training to build a set of reviewers that are trained to judge the paper under this perspective. And it's a bit different because probably we could get otherwise a suggestion that change the paper in a direction also that is not the correct one for the emotion format.
Oh, great.
So
Yes.
my idea is the idea is if we have some sample that can be used as both for the reviewer and to stimulate authorship.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is absolutely true. So currently we have a couple papers under revision, and then those two papers, I think, will serve a good example for our future submissions, and then for reviewers to understand why these papers can be published in this section. Very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we do have some coming down the pipeline, and so yeah, we will have some examples. Wendy has one actually that's going to come out in issue 11. So she has one that's a really good example for us to look at. And when that one's published, that will be published just in, 10 days or so. I can send that out to our LinkedIn group, and then also I can email it out to editorial board and whatnot. So we have at least one example there.
Great. Any other questions? Yeah, Angela?
Yes, just wondering, I had been looking to see if there was an example online, but are there any, I see the author guidelines for management decision for these in motion papers. Are there any author guidelines?
I think we have, Brendan, do we have on the site?
Yeah, it's actually on the website. If you go to that section that talks about the author guidelines, there's a specific section on InMotion itself there.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any
And-
additional questions.
One other thing I'll say is when you go to submit it in Scholar One, it is a specific type of paper you have to select in Scholar One. It
Okay.
says InMotion there, so you do have to select that if you're submitting to this section.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Good question. Anybody else? I hope this webinar is helpful to both researchers and to our reviewers too.
It was. Thank you very much.
Yeah, very, very good. I
Thank
think
you.
it's good for everyone to know how it's being reviewed as well. If you're interested in
Mhm.
submitting, it's always nice to know how it's being reviewed. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Thank you, Wendy.
No problem.
Thank you.
Helen, I saw you're unmuted. Do you have any questions?
No, I'm just gonna add to what was already said. It's definitely gonna be helpful to see a sample.
Mhm. Great.
I have another question, probably, I don't know, but is there, because if we think Brandon recall the name of the journal, like Harvard Business Review, or I don't know, others also that are very practitioner oriented. And in that case, there is a graphic also that is a bit different. I don't know if, of course, in the limits, because we are in a limit that is, do you think we can also have some graphic component that can help and probably is the publisher that should help us in that, but probably in presenting the paper also, I don't know, a scheme that then is prepared, but this is more a suggestion for the publisher. I think that for us, some graphic component also that could help in this communication, because in communicating to the practitioner, I'm thinking the kind of practitioner I know, and probably they can be helped in some graphic choice that is less. We have a journal that is oriented to research, the research community, and probably something that is remaining inside this kind of journal, but something that can help also in communicating the contents, bullet points in the beginning or something without picture, but something that can give something to read in few minutes and then to go more in depth, maybe. I don't know.
Kind of like
some
a
ideas about
little, like an executive summary kind of a thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's something we can talk about. I've seen other journals do that are practitioner based. You're right. Yeah, we can talk about that. That might be good to do.
Yeah, I think our authors are already providing those major takeaways at the beginning. So yes, it's absolutely true. And also personally, I think a graph or any figures will be helpful. So you don't need to make it too big, but as long as it's easier for general audience to follow, it's already serving a purpose.
Yeah, and we can include graphs and things in the articles. That's not a problem. Just like a regular submission can
Mhm.
include those. Yeah.
Oh, great. This is a great session. And again, I want to thank all of you. Without your support and efforts, I don't think emotion could be successful. So thank you, everyone. And if you have any other questions, or if whenever you introduce our emotion to your colleagues, if anyone have questions, just feel free to email me.
All right. Thank you, Wendy.
Great. Have a
Bye.
good day. Bye.